Sometimes people ask me what is my favorite language learning resource, and I've seen many people making videos where they show you the collection of teach yourself books, RC books, whatever books they have, and they're very interesting videos. But what I notice is that they tend to be quite language specific. And so as much as I enjoy seeing that somebody has a great selection of books for learning Japanese or Hindi or whatever language, it's not actually very relevant to me at the moment. So I'm going to talk about a language resource today that is actually quite language independent. It's a book that, at least in my opinion, is extremely helpful no matter which language you're learning. And this is the book. It's a slim book. It only has 100 or so pages, and it's called How to Improve Your Foreign Language Immediately. Foreign Language Communication Tools by Boris Shechtman. I'll put a link in the video description to this book on Amazon. It's only $10 or $11, and also to Boris Shechtman's website. Actually, I was quite surprised. I just visited that website when preparing for this video, and he actually includes on the website one of my reviews of the book that I once wrote because I was so overjoyed with it when I bought it a couple of years ago. Okay, so firstly, let me tell you about the author. So Boris Shechtman is actually Russian. He was born in the United States, sorry, born in Russia, but moved to the United States. So he speaks fluent Russian. And he was actually employed by the Foreign Service Institute, FSI, as people know it. And he actually, as I understand it, created their Russian course for teaching diplomats and other people how to become very capable in Russian as quickly as possible. And while teaching them over many years, he noticed what differentiated the people who could communicate well from the people who couldn't communicate well. And he said it came down to what errors they focused on. This is as I understand it. I wasn't there, of course, when they were speaking the language. And I've noticed that which of these errors you consider to be fundamental does seem to have a significant impact on language ability. So the first one he talks about is grammatical mistakes. I've noticed that many people get angry when I make small mistakes, or when other people make a small mistake with a word ending, or maybe put the wrong preposition in there or something like that. I've had teachers like this in the past who shouted, "You learned that last week, why don't you remember the rule?" Well, tell me it again, I'll try and remember it, but to me it's not a big deal. But some people fret, they worry away about making grammatical mistakes, so they end up not communicating. Next thing is funny accent. Oh, people are going to laugh at me because my accent doesn't sound perfect. And I know it's always nice to have a very good accent. We would all strive to have good accents if we could, and it's very, very good to strive for it, but it's not necessarily very easy. And I'm not sure that it's that important in communicating, because what Boris Shechtman says is that the biggest error with languages you can make is simply failing to communicate. That is, not getting your message across and not keeping conversations going. By the way, I was pointed to this book by somebody who'd seen my own website with my work on conversational connectors. You can find other videos on conversational connectors. But this person said Boris's book would be superb for me, and it was, because this man is saying many things that I say and more. He just is extremely knowledgeable and experienced in keeping communication going and getting your message across. So what he did when he was at the Foreign Service Institute was develop or evolve a system of communicative rules. These are the contents of the book. I'll come to that in a moment. And he found that people who followed the communicative rules that he had in place quite rapidly evolved their communications abilities, so they could go from being almost mute to being very good at communication. And he actually has stories in the book of people who were taken to speak to somebody and didn't follow the rules, and the native speaker would say, that guy can't speak our language at all. And then a few days later, they'd apply the rules, and the native speaker would be amazed and say, that's unbelievable. How did it happen? He's communicating very well now. So, after he left FSI, he adapted his rules and evolved them further so that he still works for this for a company that he's formed with others, teaching prestigious people from Time magazine, from the BBC, from NBC, from the Washington Post, and other places that need to communicate primarily in Russian, but I believe they also teach general skills in communication to learners of other languages. You can find details on their website, but I'm particularly pointing you to the book, not to their services. Okay, so he actually has 7 rules of communication. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about those rules. I'm not going to tell you what all of the rules are. That wouldn't be fair to him. But also, the book is so cheap, I recommend that you buy it anyway. The rules are not magic. You cannot read the book and wake up the next morning and be able to communicate. Instead, the rules are actually more like ways to think about using language and exercises to perform on your own, and sometimes in groups if you wish, that will improve your communication ability. So I'll show you the table of contents, and it lists here, I hope you can see this, the 7 communicative rules. So here is one, show your stuff, tool 1. Now that is something I've been talking about previously in my own videos, about being fluent with what you have. He teaches you how to take the knowledge that you have, even if you're not deeply knowledgeable in the language, but to be able to use what you have to get the maximum communication ability out of it. And again, it's got very specific exercises to follow, and I found that applying some of these really helped me to get out words that previously felt trapped inside me, and to communicate using the things that I developed and to not be afraid of them. Okay, another one is build up your islands. So this is about rehearsing over and over and over again and refining over and over and over again the kind of topics that you find you come up with in real life. So journalists or diplomats would often go to meetings with senior politicians, and they knew that certain topics would come up, so they'd prepare speeches in advance that they were very fluid in. Sometimes they'd be quite short, just a couple of paragraphs, but they'd know them inside out. And then whenever a conversation was struggling a little bit, they could swim back to the island and be in a comfortable position again. And he mentions in the book people who have, I think, a couple of hundred of these built up over time that they know inside out, and that gives you a very broad level of comfort in many areas where you can always go to if you're struggling to come up with something to say. Yeah, so simplify, simplify, simplify. This is actually something I mentioned in one of my recent videos, that no matter what you want to discuss, there's always a way to say it in simple terms, even if you're stuck for specific vocabulary. So he teaches you how to simplify, how to be able to express complicated things, even with limited abilities, and get your message across. Okay, I don't want to go on about the rest of the topics, the rules in here. I've mentioned briefly 3 of them. As I said, it is a slim book. You can read it quite quickly. It only costs $11, so please do consider buying it. I think it's had a tremendous influence on me. I've looked at it time and again, and I apply its principles very frequently, some more than others, I must say. And if you work with it, as I said, it's not going to be magic. Just owning the book, reading it once and putting it on the shelf isn't going to help. But if you work with it and follow its advice, and it is effort, yes, but if you do, I think you'll find it as rewarding as I did. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.